Hi, welcome to another episode of the Bold Blueprint. And today we have Liz with us. Hi, Liz.
Hi. Hi, Marie, and everyone listening.
I'm very excited to have you here. We met on social media and I put this post out there and I had an incredible reach. And I am excited to being able to be the platform for you to share your story. You also have a podcast, but for people that don't know what you do or who you are, how what would you say to them, Liz?
Oh, what a loaded question. I don't know how much time do we have. So I am a Los Angeles native. If you're anyone, if we're watching this, there's a palm tree behind me, but for those listening, that's described. I grew up in Los Angeles. I have come and gone. I'm someone who's traveled to 20 plus countries. I've lived in several of them. I grew up as a performer. I wanted to be on Broadway and TV star, and I ended up studying acting in New York City. And I came back to Los Angeles, did the whole song and dance, so to speak, and ended up in hospitality, as we do when we're doing that line of work. I ran through several high-end restaurants, which was great for me. I got into leadership. I again fell in love with traveling, decided that I wanted to leave this world behind, packed all my things, and left the country for 2.5 years, eventually getting to Australia for a couple of those. And along that journey, with different ways that I experienced my life, I decided that I wanted to work in health and wellness. And I eventually got myself to what my day job is, which is working with Orange Theory Fitness. But it was a long journey to get there. And as I kind of look at my path, there are so many different things that I see that are part of my, if you're in an acting world, backstory that really led me here. And I think it all culminated in me becoming a certified life and career coach in the last year and starting my community called Haus of Worthship, which is an all women's virtual community and a space for women who feel like they really don't fit in or haven't fit in, that their story is something that they maybe have held some shame with, experienced things that they felt very alone in, and are really trying to reframe how they see that because I've just experienced so much in this world and so many women in particular who really feel like they don't deserve the life they want. And a lot of that is baked into feeling like their story defines them, but it doesn't just define them, it runs them. And so I try to, in the community, bring us together with several different frameworks that I've developed over time, both in leadership and executive development and now in personal development. So I can tell you all about how that works, but really it's based on allowing women a space to truly find their self-worth and rediscover that their stories don't have to run their lives.
Wow, that seems like an incredible journey to be
Thank you.
on. And it seems like to all the guests I have spoken to, it seems more like a purpose
Yes.
than a career. It's you find your way to it, and it kind of finds its way to you also. Um, what would you say was the one of the things that help you let lead you through this purpose?
That's a great question. And, it's easy to say something like intuition, but I didn't always feel that connected to intuition. And I think part of what I allowed to happen to me was just letting things come up, and following opportunities when they present themselves. I really love learning. That's what I love about travel too. I love culture. I love discovery. And if I'm listening to my gut and my intuition, that's really what led me to learning about myself, to helping me better understand human behavior and the reasons that we do things. And just allowing myself to continue to be open to new possibilities and taking advantage of trips to places and new people to introduce myself to, and kind of that go with the flow releasing of perfectionist people pleasing. It's come and gone, obviously, because we're humans and we never really we're never perfect. But that journey in itself, I think, has been what's led me here. And I think I've just learned how to feel through those moments. And it's definitely a practice.
What would you say the one thing, or maybe there's various, that has let you be more intuitive with yourself? Because I feel that sometimes we have difficulty to listen to ourselves because we're in that high achiever, or we have thing a lot of things to get done, so we prefer to get things done and we don't listen to ourselves, or we get sick, and all these things kind of trickle down.
Absolutely. And you're so right, especially in the world of go, go, go and capitalism and work 60 hours a week, even though you only really need to work 40. And if you're not producing, you're not living, and we live to work or work to live or whatever that cycle is, right? It becomes almost self-fulfilling prophecy when you say, oh, no, 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 like I'm taking my vacation like soon, later, later, later. And then you never get to it, right? Because you're so busy working and earning to get to it. And then sometimes you get to it and your vacation feels like work, and then you get back and you're back in the work. And so I hear you on that. And I love that we're already getting into this, but part of what I bring to my community and to the leaders that I develop is a framework that I call Notice, Ask, Act. And it's a very simple loop, and you can run it anytime. But the key to it is that you have to start with unabashed self-awareness before you can get to intentional action. And now what you're talking about of listening to your intuition, you can't listen to it unless you know it's there, right? So if you break that down and you say, okay, let me slow down my day a little bit. You have to have the intention first. And sometimes that starts with waking up and having a routine for yourself. And even if it's a very small 10 seconds of your day, just notice what thoughts you're having, what you feel in your body, if you're feeling connected to the moment. Having a moment of presence, it doesn't matter how small, just starting to have that practice will get you into that notice phase. If you can get into notice and just acknowledge for yourself, ooh, my breath's a little high. Oh, I'm sweating a little bit. Oh, you know what? I'm pretty tired this morning. Great. Start with that. Then you get to the ask part. When you can sit with it a little bit longer, you ask yourself some ways to clarify for your inner human, why? Why is this happening? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I want more of this or less of this? And then you get into how. So what, why, and how, right? How can I have more or less of this? How can I move myself from feeling this way to feeling this way? And start with the lowest difficulty that you can, the smallest lift, even if it feels insignificant, especially if it feels insignificant. So if I were to say, I want to listen to myself right now, a lot of us just like blow past your gut instinct, right? You're in a moment and you say, your gut's actually telling your brain, this isn't right. Something's not right here. And we blow through it and we don't acknowledge it until later. And then we go, oh, we never should have done that. Never should have had that deal. Never should have had that conversation. Never should have gone to that. Right. And sometimes the stakes are relatively low and sometimes the stakes are really high. And hindsight's 2020, right? So as long as we can slow ourselves down, even if you're having hindsight, just start with hindsight. Sometimes we don't even get a moment to stop and think about what we've done, to reflect on it. Anywhere you start, that's the loop I always suggest.
That is awesome. I think that's a great technique. Earlier, I was having a discussion with a coach, and she was saying, it's like, because I told her that it's hard to have a positive mindset sometimes. You're always your Debbie Downer, basically, and realize the self-talk that you have with yourself and how to change that self-talk. Mostly when you come from, I don't want to repeat that because it feels loaded, but when you come from trauma or where something had a loop throughout your life that you realize that you were repeating and people were saying that to you too, you have a hard time having a positive talk or a positive outlook on life. And more now, I catch myself having this, oh, but this didn't work out for me. And I'm like, I don't want to see the glass half
Empty.
empty.
Yeah.
I want to see it half full and have this acknowledgement of like, it wasn't meant to be. It might have been redirection. It didn't need it to happen. It's going to happen later.
Hmm.
And I think that we have a hard time acknowledging that all those feelings come from in us
Hmm.
and from a transparency that we didn't have as kids, that our parents were doing their best to
Hmm.
get through life, but
Yeah.
they didn't have the acknowledgement that sometimes it's okay to talk about feelings. This is what happened. This is how we can talk about it, and this is how I'm feeling about it.
Hmm.
And I think that now more and more of what I'm seeing with women is like we're wanting the change. It doesn't have to be as motivational. I think that men are more motivational, women are more in the I want to connect with myself to be able to get motivated that way.
Yes.
Because once I am in tune with myself, I know how to get to the motivation.
Yes, the intrinsic versus the extrinsic for sure. Like there definitely is where you can kind of dangle the carrot and they go, oh yeah, that's going to be what I need. Like, oh yeah, the $1 million job, let me go get it. And for women, it's like, no, I need to know that I'm centered. I need to know that this is providing clarity for me or something, right? Like we are a much more internal organism from an emotional standpoint. So that does make sense. And I love what that you brought up. I mean, so many things that you just said. I was like, ooh, 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 ooh. Let me
Please
jump on
take
that, right?
away.
So I hope I don't I hope I hit
No,
everything.
no, no.
The first thing you mentioned, which is having history and having the negative self-talk, and it's really hard. First of all, again, notice it, right? We have to notice when it's happening. We get faster and faster at noticing that once we start the practice and then moving forward. But a lot of times, and this is where toxic positivity culture and affirmations, they have this clash and the disconnect, because most of us, if we just having a negative thought and then immediately go, no, don't have that thought, put this thought in instead. And we try to override it. It's not actually getting rid of this. It's putting a band-aid on top, but it's not healing anything underneath, right? So we have to give it a minute to breathe. We need some oxygen. It needs to coagulate, right? So we have to acknowledge that it's there and recognize. Then the ask is like, what was this protecting me from? You're right. You developed this as a survival mechanism. Your parents didn't have every tool. Most of us don't. And so that's okay. But let's get to where we are right now and say, is this still serving me? Do I want this still? And say, thank you so much, survival technique. We are going to work to reduce you, right? I like to talk about a dimmer board, because I think from my
Mm.
perspective, we're not on off switches. I talk about this a lot. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, where little Riley, she is born with certain emotions. They're very, very simple emotions. And then as she gets older, she develops like ennui and like all these other things that are very complex. And they never actually go away, but you're able to toggle them up and down. And this is the same for all of our behaviors, right? Like you cannot get rid of your story. Your story defines you, and it should. I can't stand. This is a hot take from Liz, but I can't stand when people say, "Oh, don't let your story define you." You absolutely should let your story define you. It's what makes every one of us unique and interesting. But we shouldn't let our stories run us. And that's what's so important when I talk about this work, is that I want everyone to own their story. I want you to feel though that your story doesn't mean you're bad or you're horrible or that you should be ashamed of anything. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's unique. So in this moment, is your story providing something that is benefiting you? Or is it something you want to learn from, pause, lower, and then move forward with some another way? Your story is still your story. So the acceptance part, the self-forgiveness, whatever people want to call it, right? Is really more in the work of presently, is this serving me? And do I want it? Do I want it? Do I want to keep it?
I love the mindset shift because I am a big believer in like your story doesn't define you, but I think it's like more of and that is why I love these conversations because somebody will have a different take on a same topic and just shift the words. And I think that that is the most powerful thing you can do is like just shift the words and you realize that it was just how it was put in your brain. I refer to this as like Harry Potter and Dumbledore just takes the memory away. It's how the words were sifted through, and it's not it defines you, but it does define you. It doesn't run you. You don't have to follow through that pattern. You don't have to repeat the same things. And I think that that's exactly it. It's
Yep.
like you're able to change. So yeah, it might not define you completely on like hard because that's how I see it as like your parents give you a foundation. They draw the plans of your house. But once you get into your house when you're 20 or when you're younger or when you're older and you actually, I feel like sometimes we have like blinders on or a veil on. And when the veil gets lifted, you're like, wait, but this house doesn't look like me.
Right? It's so old and dingy. We need to renovate. Let's knock this wall out. Let's make this floor to ceiling windows. Let's like, put a skylight in. Like,
Exactly. So you start to get into that sense of like, oh, so
mhm,
this doesn't belong to me anymore.
right.
This has nothing to do with me anymore. Oh, I can keep this because I do feel this connection still. And I think it's so important to realize that sometimes it's just about the words
Yeah.
and how we connect to them.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for picking up on that. And thank you for countering me with the definition thing because I was like that too. I don't want my story to define me. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't like to live with regrets or resentments. I feel like as long as I'm present and I'm taking accountability for my actions and I am constantly taking measure of am I happy? And am I happy with the person I am and I'm becoming? Then I should be thankful for every single thing that's happened to me, the good and the bad. And again, this may not be for everybody and trauma is real and I'm not saying that anyone should absolutely be like, I'm so glad I was X, Y, and Z, right? But I've been through enough myself to still have gratitude for seeing things from a perspective and being able to move forward with them in a way that's healthy for me and still being happy to be me. And that's really hard to do when you go through hard things. And, going back to a couple of things you were talking about, right? When you have the negative self-talk, it is really hard to reconcile, again, putting that band-aid back on and trying to change it, but also it becomes easier when we can recognize that it's a thought, right? We distance ourselves from that emotion. So I am a failure is not I am a failure. It's I am having a thought that I'm a failure. Right? Like I'm having that thought. Is that thought reality? Let's play back the tapes, right? Let's run through the plays. No, right? You're most definitely not, right? It's that all or always never thinking. Um uh it's very black and white, right? It's very hyperbolic. It's usually not true. So again, when we can slow ourselves down enough to ask the questions, we usually come out of it and we get faster at it, but we have to start with that. And then the point about your parents, right? I love that you said, uh, our parents are just trying to do the best they can. And that's such a hard thing to reconcile is that everyone's dealt a different hand. And if you like the empathy glasses of if I were raised how my parents were raised, if I were growing up in the generations that they grew up in, if I were told the things that my parents were told, looked the way my parents looked, sounded the way my parents sounded, had these experiences the way my parents had them, how would I have dealt with that? And the answer is like you put your feet in their shoes and you have to have a bit of empathy for the fact that they kept you breathing, I guess. Like at the very least, you're still breathing, right? There's always kind of a way to look at it, but it's much harder to despise your family and your parents when you can try to have empathy for how they got to where they are.
Um, I just released an episode about how I grew up with a alcoholic mother, and for 7 years I cut her out of my life, and it was one of the biggest decisions I took for myself. And I think that through those 7 years, I went to the 5 stages of grief in a sense, because one of the biggest things I had to deal through that time was anger. Anger that things were done a certain way, anger that I had to go through that accountability was never taken or was never shown, um, that realizing that my vision of the story was not understood or not seen. And from both sides, it took a long time for me to be able to get to a place of like, I am able to forgive. And I realized that a couple years back when I decided to get back in touch with her, that I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't sad anymore. I was relieved, like a weight had lifted,
Mhm.
because I realized that I I saw that phrase and I was like, remember, and I think that that's exactly when I got in touch with her, is like, remember is the first time your parents are living. And it hit me like a rock. And it was like, oh, why is it so heavy?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's my first time living too.
Yeah.
But I think that we have this, and I think
Expectation.
we have this high expectations that because there are parents, because there are grandparents, because there is somebody in our family that are older than us, they know better. And it's not always true.
No.
They haven't lived through this period of life before. They haven't done what they've done, or they haven't gone through that experience. And I think at the time I was giving myself grace of how I handle things, because I think that taking the decision I took for the both of us saved both of our lives in a sense, because it gave her the ability to take care of herself.
Yeah.
And it gave me the ability to get to safety for myself. And I think that we often forget that you don't have to put yourself in the ringer all the time.
No.
And as I'm 30, I'm going into 31. And I think at this stage of my life, I'm more like, I just want to be in peace. And one of you said something, and it brought, there's a special woman in my life that always has the right words. And I call her the Oracle, because she
Great.
feels like a very savvy woman. And she just always has the right words for me. She can be very truthful, but her words never land wrongfully.
Yeah.
And she said the purest form of liberty is to choose.
Wow. She's poetic. Wow. How
And
wonderful to have someone in your life that can reflect back things to you like that. It's really lovely.
it's, she's, I could never tell you how much she has impacted my life. But the day she told me that, I was like, how can it be that a simple phrase can change the whole perspective you have on things?
Yeah.
And it's as simple as just giving yourself grace and giving the people around you grace. There will be miscommunication, there will be misunderstanding, but we haven't, and I think that I realize this more and more, we don't have all the same versions of the same things we have lived through
Yeah.
because we have, I don't know if you ever heard of the law of expectations. We already have expectations and we have views on certain things and I think that's what I'm saying is like I'm very hard on myself. I
Mhm.
may not be as hard on people around me, but I'm very hard on myself. I have a lot of expectations and when there's expectations that not met with myself, I'm like, excuse you,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah. Well,
And
you honestly, it sounds like, and thank you for sharing that with me. Um, you had a lot to prove, right?
I call myself the little black duck in my family. I've always called myself that. It's like you're the oldest that I realized that a couple months ago. It's like I am the oldest daughter of only daughter in a fraternity of a eldest daughter, and I was like, ah, this carries a lot of weight,
Mm-hmm. It's very heavy. Yeah.
and I think that women in itself don't realize that. It's like my therapist told me this. It's like you don't have to carry other people's rocks into your bag. It
Yours
is
are
already
yours are heavy enough.
exact. Yours are heavy enough. You can throw some rocks away that
Mhm.
are not yours to carry in the first place.
Yeah.
So no, I really appreciate your perspective because I am a poet, I am a writer, and when I read back some of my work, I realize how words and because they were used in a way to be weapons. And I think that when you grow up in that environment, words have such a powerful meaning
Hmm.
and they can be disconstrued in a powerful way.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to ask you if what was one of those powerful moments that you had lived through that forged or guided you into this path that you are on today?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if it was one moment or many moments, but I grew up in my parents. I relate and I don't relate, but I've spent a lot of time with parents and people in AA and Al-Anon over my existence, but not with my parents. My parents, they actually don't drink at all, which I'm not sure makes this better or worse. But I grew up in a very angry household, and my father is someone who is a baby boomer through and through. He was born in 1945. You know, he is traditional in a lot of senses, and he grew up in a fairly wealthy family, well off, and his parents were bootstrapped and like made everything of themselves, right? So that very American dream type of dynamic. And he did not have a very good sense of cool. So I grew up in a home that was quite volatile. He and I always got along famously, but I have a temperament that's more like my mother. My sister has a temperament that's more like his. And so I grew up as the peacemaker. I was always there to keep everyone calm. I became the person that everyone would come to if they needed a favor from dad. They'd come get me, right? They're like, "Oh, you go talk to him. He'll say yes to you." And I shut my door and get to my homework and be the good student and make sure I didn't have any problems while they're all outside yelling at each other. And so that became a personality trait, right? A pattern, habits in relationships. I also grew up overweight. And so I was the chubby sibling. I was the chubby friend. I wasn't by any means like massive, but, and even looking back, I go, my God, like I wasn't, how did I feel that way about myself? I was so like normal. I was bigger than a lot of the kids, you grow up, some kids grow up and they're like little twigs, and that just was not me. Um, but it made me strong and great at sports and athletic. And I loved, dance and doing things like that. But it became very hard. And again, growing up in Los Angeles, when you aren't a stick figure, that's also very difficult as a woman. To your point about expectations, you walk out of the womb, your first breath is already filled the world's expectations of what a woman is supposed to do with herself, with her mind, with her body, with her life, right? So add on to that anything that you inherit from your family, and you get, and those rocks are boulders, and you are like, you barely can move up the hill. So, disordered eating, massive anxiety. I started having panic attacks when I was about 8 or 9, and horrible insomnia. I wouldn't be able to fall asleep unless it was like a certain time and place, and I knew where my parents were, and I would have, scream dreams where I'm running around the house screaming, and I developed this horrible sense of anxiety, and that kind of moved through my adulthood, and I actually thought that from the time I was maybe 17, I thought that I was getting complex migraines where my left side would start to tingle, my face would start to tingle, I would kind of lose my ability to talk, and my vision would fog. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that it kind of started to happen again, because it stopped throughout my late 20s and early 30s. It started to happen again, and I went to a neurologist, and he said, "You've never had a complex migraine. You've been having panic attacks." And I was like, just knowing that already has lifted so much weight, because I wasn't carrying my own anxiety. I was carrying it for everyone else. Right. And just to know, oh, when I have this symptom, going back to listening to yourself, oh, when I feel my chest start to tighten, oh, when I feel a little tingle in my hand, I'm having anxiety. Right. I take some deep breaths. I slow down my thinking and my breathing. I take a minute to just ease off the gas, because your body actually is telling you things before your brain does. And a lot of times we get that wrong. Um, so anyway, little by little, I think I developed all of these things. So then, disordered relationship with self and self-esteem, abusive relationships, physical and mostly verbal. I got into a horrible physical altercation with a previous person I was seeing, that really blew my mind. I was sexually assaulted in college when I went there. I went to school again in New York. It was a really hard place to be. It was the most depressing place for me. I love New
Mm,
York City, and I had a great time, but it's for a city where you're never alone. It's very lonely when you don't know yourself and you don't feel confident in who you are. So I went through a lot of struggles in my early 20s. And that's where I felt when I fell in love with travel and started to explore the world and understand that other people have different perspectives, and um, really start to appreciate culture and backstory and background and history, and how this world has come to be, and how all of us are really truly connected. That started to change and move my understanding of myself to be, all of these things are so insignificant, because what we do on this planet and our purpose, and going back to that, is so much bigger. And so that really started to shift me in some beautiful ways.
that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine how difficult that part of being away from your home or your family or your support and going through something hard is not the word,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it doesn't encounter how difficult something like that is to do within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and how it appears to the world. I don't know how your experience was, and if you're willing to share, I would love to hear it, because I feel like a lot of people have a difficulty opening up about it, and I can completely understand, because your youth is so sexualized, and growing up as a woman, you're very sexualized. So whatever you wear, or whatever you put on your face, how you dress, or how you walk, how you eat, is taken out of context
Hmm.
to make a show out of it.
Hmm.
And
We're
I
seen as
am,
objects. We're seen as pleasure toys. We're seen as the, the trophy on a shelf or whatever that is. And you're absolutely right. And I'm happy to share. My experience was actually with a friend's boyfriend, and I think this was not unusual for this particular couple. This was probably something that was happened a lot, but I don't remember it. We were at our dorm, went back to our dorm. I kind of already knew I didn't really want to spend time with them because I had already had an interaction with them that made me uncomfortable. And so I told my roommates, I said, I was like, please don't leave me with them. And they were like, yeah, yeah, okay, okay. And we went downstairs to get he was like, oh, I'll come with you. Right. I'm like, okay. Went downstairs to get some, drinks from the vending machines for, mixers or whatever. And he was very flirty and tried to, kind of cop a feel in the elevator, so to speak. And I was like, hey, you're with her. Let's not do this. I'm not interested in making that a thing. And actually coming back upstairs and having that last drink was the last thing I remember the whole night. I think I'd only had that was maybe my third drink, and now I wasn't a professional at that time, but 3 drinks normally didn't put me into a blackout phase. And I woke up the next morning. I had a bra on, sweatpants on, and no underwear. I was on top of my bed, and I came out, and my roommates were already kind of like going and doing whatever, and I was like, what the fuck happened last night? And they were like telling me about how like, oh, you got emotional talking about this and you were so drunk. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't understand. And then they said, well, we walked out. We had to go early this morning they were on the dance team. And they're like, well, we had to get up early for a competition. So we went to bed pretty early. You guys were out here till all hours. And when we got up in the morning, his girlfriend was passed out on the couch and he came out of your room. And I was like, what? Like, I don't understand. And so like and I was like, wait, that was like not, and they were like, whatever, it's fine. And I was like, okay, so now I look like the slut who slept with friend's boyfriend. I also was like, I don't remember any of this. I'm like, I was trying to kind of make it make sense. And that was my sophomore year in college. And I said, well, I'm never spending time with them ever again. I was like, people would go to parties and do this. And I was like, I'm good. And so I really separated myself. And actually, that next semester, I decided that I was going to go study abroad. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I need to remove myself. Like, I don't even want to be a part of what this world is. So I actually went abroad and studied in Florence. And it was the best if possible experience of all time. I love Florence. It still feels like home away from home. That was probably what really kind of secured me a lot in being independent. I lived with a family, so I wasn't stuck with, it kind of like the sorority feeling of being in a dorm room with other 20-year-olds. So I really felt like I was amongst the people. I learned Italian. I actually met my college boyfriend. We were both on a plane going from Pisa to Amsterdam, and we struck up a conversation. And I was like, oh, he's so cute and so tall, and all these things. Um, so, I it really shifted how I saw the world. But, a few years later, there was definitely some dampening of like, I'm going to shove this down and not think about it. And like, I'll just control it. Right. I will watch every drink that ever gets poured, and I won't go out with these people, and I will not think about it. And it's like, it's my own fault. Like I left myself in the situation, right? I shouldn't have had them over, been out earlier. And then everyone's like, oh, let's go back. And I was like, no, 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 let's not. And they were like, no, we're going back. And I'm like, okay. Like feeling that sense of not being able to control the situation. Right. So immediately I just went into, well, like now we're gonna control everything. Um, and years later I had, kind of my own mental breakdown about it when I started really thinking about what that meant. But I really, again, I didn't ever let it define me. I didn't, it didn't shift so much of my identity. I really just decided that there are bad, shitty people out there, and I'm not one of them. And bad shit happens all the time. Not that that's an excuse, but I honestly, I'm kind of, I'm weirdly lucky that that was my experience, because I can't imagine having suffered through something where you were forced and aware of what was going on. So
I appreciate your sharing that. I think it's powerful and important, and your vision of it is incredible because I think that there's a lot of things that will happen to us, and how we take in account and how we start listening to ourselves because of it will be defining. Um, and it makes me really happy because it just shows the way you think. And I am very appreciative for that because, yes, there's a lot of bad people out there, but how we decide to take that instance doesn't make us fit into a certain mold. What we do with that. And I imagine that in your community, there might be other women that have gone through something similar. They haven't talked. And having you as somebody that's able to talk about it and showing them that it's not something that defines you, you're able to have a happy and wonderful life,
Mhm.
even if you've experienced something like
Yeah,
that.
definitely. And it's horrible to say, but the fact that, what, 1 to 2 thirds of women have gone through something like that is it's horrifying. And the more we can talk about it and bring transparency, the more we can all kind of discuss what that looks like and know and feel like it is okay to have had that experience. It's almost relieving to know that so many people have gone through it, because you don't feel by yourself. And I think that for a long time was a big, big problem, is that people felt so alone in what that looked like. And I remember hearing from another girl at school with me talking about them one day, and she said, "Oh my God, that happened to you too with them." And I was like, okay, interesting. And it almost brought relief. I was like, okay, I'm not the asshole here, right? Like, this this is a classic play, and I was just part of the run. Um, so and it's shitty, but what are you going to do? Going to move on. I have a wonderful husband who loves me. I do not want children. That has not been something that I've ever realized, actually, later in my life, that it's not something I ever really wanted, actually, looking back. But um, for what it's worth, it's being a woman and having the experiences you have. You are absolutely allowed to feel exactly how you feel about something, as long as you're happy with who you are. I think that's really the measure. Because I mean, I know you were saying you're like, having to really prove yourself and taking on other people's things, and you're one of a fraternity. You're like the woman in a fraternity, right? And having all these expectations and the pressure. And I think people think about that as like personality flaws. And I mean, I wanted to ask you, after you shared, are you happy with who you are and happy with the life you're building?
I am learning to be happy. I think that I had this with my oracle. I have this talk about, um, she said the whole purpose of life is not to be happy. Happiness is, um, how did she put it? It's very volatile.
Hmm.
Peace is the word. And I think that that's what I'm looking for now at this point in my life is not, I want to be happy, happy on, I read a book and made me happy. I had good food, it made me happy. It's more of this sense of blissfulness and peace that there is no more a sense of like, I've been saying this, and maybe for the next month, a lot of my episodes will hear this. I am, I feel like I am in the middle of the water and I'm like swimming in circles.
Hmm.
And it's not that I'm unhappy or not at peace of where I am, it's not where I want to be. I want to be able to reach shore. And somebody put it this way to me, and I thought it was a beautiful way to put it. It's like, I have an island and I want to create being able to reach what I need to reach to the people in the island around me. It doesn't have to be the whole world, but it's if that island feels like peace, feels like happiness, feels like that feeling of like when you, I don't know, that's how I feel. It's like when you're at the beach and you have the breeze on your face, you have the sun, you can hear the waves, and it's just like blissfully content.
Yes. I love that. I love that you frame it that way and that your oracle, I love that you call her that, has that sentiment with you. And you're right. It is fleeting. Happiness is fleeting, right? It's a choice. It's momentary. It can be. And I think when you build that picture, you have your island. What does every bridge look like to get to each other's island? And do you have what you need on your island? And it's one thing to also say, well, I'm at peace with what I have, right? An acceptance of like, oh, well, this is my life and I'm just going to accept this and be happy with it. But if that's not true to who you are, right? Like if you are someone who feels empowered by going after things and empowered by being busy and finding things to do and being the best at something, then that's not something that you need to get rid of, right? Again, it's going back to, well, do I like this about myself? If you love that about yourself, like you're fucking ambitious and you are busy all day and you are talking to people and you're going to do your thing, like that's bliss, right? That's your excitement, your purpose. And that's where, I always want to ask it in the moment. If you were going to change anything about yourself, would you, what would it be? And now you don't have to answer that, but it's just like, well, if you don't like it, start to change. Let's start to change. Let's build what it looks like to be
You
different.
have the ability to choose.
Yeah.
It's I think that it's also maybe the period of life of where I am. I think a lot of like I didn't know before, but it feels like when you enter era of life, there is a lot of things that kind of switch. And like I read about Saturn return and the Middle and all these things, and I kind of like been feeling it so much lately. And last year I thought it was like, okay, I'm good. And this year something happened and I lost my job again, and I was like, oh wait, why is this happening again? And I have a firm belief that the universe is just telling me something. And I have not been wanting to listen. And it was like, he didn't listen last year, so we're going to do it again.
What do you think the universe is telling you?
That I'm not meant to be in construction. it,
Yeah.
it's,
Thank you, universe.
it's, it's so weird, but I was like, I was telling my partner, I was like, I may be really good at it. I may be doing it and pushing through because that's how I put myself out there. I had to learn something. I had to do something. And I really grew in 8 years. I went and conquered a certain part of my world into what I was doing. But I always told him, it's like, I love construction. It will always be something that has helped me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not my first love. It's not what I want to do. And it feels so incredibly terrifying saying that what you've been doing and what you've trying to do with your life might not be what you're going to do because you have that fixation that to be to safety, you have to work. But how do you create a place of this is the work I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I want to do. And when you don't have an income or something sustainable to keep you alive, because in these times, it's not like it's all easy to be in this position. It's even more scarier because you have to put in a situation, okay, so what do I like? What do I not like? Where I want to be? Where I don't want to be? And where is this taking me?
Mm-hmm.
And when we were talking earlier, I was saying like, I launched the podcast in June 1st, but I was working on it. So when I got let go of my job, I really put my focus and my all into the podcast, and it's been keeping me centered and alive and being able to have these conversations and meeting people.
Mhm.
And I think that we have a hard time realizing that we were not, and mostly I'm realizing more as women, we're not meant to be enclosed in a frame of like, we're working a 9 to 5 and then we're going to the gym and we're doing all these things and we have to keep up
Yeah.
because it's not the point. And I think that I realize more and more I want to have fun. I forgot to have fun along the way. I forgot to have a sense of joy doing something that really lights me up, that really brings a sense of self. And I
Mhm.
think that that's the part of you get lost because a job gives you a sense of self. You're doing that. And it gives you, your job is very related because either you went to school for it or you didn't go to school and you learn how to do that job. So it really relates to a lot of things that you learn throughout your life. So when you lose that part of you, who are you? And somebody put that in perspective. As I say, words are very important. It's like maybe you're just grieving the person that you were because of that job. And I was like, wait, what?
So let me ask you a follow-up to that. What parts of you did you love when you were in that job that you can take with you so you don't have to grieve the whole thing?
I, I'm just keeping being slapped in the face with all these questions. Um,
It but that's where it's so beautiful, right? You get
yes,
to have that choice. You get to have that conversation with yourself because you're not a different person, right? You've learned all the things you have. It's not like you just shut that part off of you. You became the woman who can say yes to following what she wants because she went through all of that. You don't just throw away construction Marie, right? She comes with you. You know all of the ways that you ran business and that you talked to people and that you built your skills. And this 30-year-old woman, inclusive of the 8 years that taught you how to go for what you want, came from that.
definitely. And I think that that ties to having the podcast and being able to have conversations that you weren't able to have with other people is like meeting people. You didn't know what they were doing before, you never met them, but at a job site, you will see somebody new. They were teaching a new thing. I always say when I met contractors as subcontractors, like, take me like I'm a child. I know nothing. I'm
Mhm.
here to help you deliver. That's my job. I'm just here to help you. So whatever you need, I will make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of see everybody is like, my job is to make things easier for you. And if it's going to be a toll on me, that's fine. That's my job to make yours being deliverable on time. And I think that having these conversations and having this changes perspective and having the ability to have conversation about hardships and how you got to the other side of whatever you're going through, it's what has been fueling the light of, yeah, I feel lost, but I may not feel that. There's a world compass when
Mhm.
the compass is out of,
Alignment or like it's
and
spinning and like it can't find a
yes,
direction.
exactly.
Magnetic field is like.
Exactly. You have to put a magnet in front.
Mhm.
I I may not see shore because it's foggy around me, but
Yeah.
I know that it's there.
Mhm. I bet it's closer than you think.
I hope so too. I said to myself that I feel like I've lost focus and what really makes myself love the grind. I feel like it's not that I want to be, I feel like a lot of women are perfectly amazing at that. I loving. But I feel like the first focus I have to have is myself. And along the way, we forget that.
Yes. Put your own life mask on before others.
Yeah. It's the same thing as planes.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you if there was one thing that you would say to any version of younger you, what would it be?
It might be, it's always interesting every time I come back to this question, because I mean, like this is it's a question that a lot of, when you're doing this kind of work, it gets asked, gets asked in a lot of rooms. And it's always a little bit different. But I think it would be slow down. Like this is enjoy everything because there's this is your life, right? Make it what you want it to be, not what other people want it to be for you.
It moves so quickly.
Yeah. It's so hard though. It's so hard when you're young to really be able to see past what other people have put in front of you, right? It's very limited. So the second you can, take advantage.
Definitely. And also, I wanted to talk because you also have a podcast. You're a co-host on a podcast. How did the idea come up? How it started? What
Mhm.
do you guys talk about on the podcast?
Yes. So my podcast is called Beyond Dimensional, and my girlfriend and I, we co-host together. We've actually taken a bit of a hiatus while I've been working full time and building my community this past year. But we did record, couple dozen episodes back in 24, 25, and we are planning to get it back on every week. She's on me about it, but the through line is she's a psychic medium. That's something that she came to understand about herself later in life. She's someone who's introduced a lot of the spiritual aspects of my own life and intuition and understanding, um, space and time and all of the shadow and the dimensions and things like that. But she grew up naturally a skeptic, and she's someone who grew up in a highly religious background, and so that kind of discussion and that kind of idea was very very shunned. And so, as a natural skeptic myself, she and I get along famously. We're both very sarcastic. We both like to curse. Although I was pretty good about it today. I think we managed not to be horrible on this. But you're very calming energy, I will say. So I didn't get
Oh,
too heated.
thank you.
Um,
Oh, I am a cursor. I was like,
I
I
love
will tell you. My partner says, like, it looks at me. I was like, woman, what's happening? I was like,
that. Shut
it
your
is what
mouth.
it is. I am Latino too, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, spicy everywhere. It's just so much spice. I love it. So she and I, we wanted to speak to people about that gap between spiritual and scientific. We're like, okay, we know these two things exist. How can we help other people who maybe feel like we're not really sure? Like, do you really talk to baby souls? Like, is that a thing, or like, are we totally out of our minds here? And so we talk to different uh, psychic medium and spiritually inclined people. And we also try to talk to people with backgrounds in science, psychology, psychiatry, behavioral science, and a lot of them actually overlap. It's very interesting because a lot of the people we've met have worked in the medical field, like Western medical field, either in like in the hospital environment for from a nursing standpoint, or in psychiatry or therapy, and then got somehow shifted into the spiritual world. And it's fascinating to hear how people connect and their stories of how they got to be practicing what they do. And so we really lean into that with a little fun, a little cursing, a little wit. So yeah, we'll get back to that probably next year.
That is amazing. I can't wait to listen to it. I wanted to ask because I feel like not a lot of women get asked this question, or I haven't seen maybe because on my feed it doesn't happen a lot, but I had this conversation with one of my cousins, and how did you come to the conclusion? And I think it comes more to this era of life, or maybe where we are now as a society, that you did not want kids?
Oh yeah. So when I dated my boyfriend in college, I was someone actually who grew up like I didn't babysit kids. I was the younger sibling, so I didn't have younger siblings to take care of. I never really was one to be like, "Oh, I'll babysit for your kids." Like it was just never part of what I wanted to do. Um, and then when I was dating my college boyfriend, we dated for 4.5 years, and the beginning it was all very exciting, and I was like, oh, this is like it's family, and like his family's so normal and traditional, and he's the eldest of three kids. He's the boy of two with two other girls, and like they're so like oh, it's a dynamic, and he loved babies. Every time we were around a baby, he'd like, I'm holding the baby. And I was like, oh, and I realized that as time went on, when people would be like, oh, you guys can get married, I'd be like, probably. And then within a few years, it was like, probably. And I like started like my stomach would drop out and I'd be like, oh my God. And that dynamic of like being a wife and a mother started to like really real for me. And then when I started traveling, I kind of just stopped thinking about it. And I was at that point years later dating someone else. He actually grew up in a broken home. His parents were never married as an only child. And he was like, I don't think I want to get married or have kids. And I was at that point where, my parents' dynamic and they've been married 46 years. They're still married to this day. But it's not necessarily a well-functioning relationship, but they're companions and they're aging out and they have each other. So, I was like, I don't really want to get married. It seems like it's not that great. Like your parents were never married. Most of my friends' parents are divorced. My parents are still like unhappily married. So like, what's the point? And kids just never I never had that pang. And my friends started to have kids and I was like, oh, hi. And like it would scream and I'd be like, oh God, get it away from me. Like I just started realizing that it was just not something I enjoyed. I don't enjoy being around children. They they annoy me. They ask too many questions. They run around when you don't want them to. They spill things. I working in restaurants also wasn't great. Like when we're going through that time of people bringing their kids into restaurants and they were nice restaurants and they like I worked at Nobu and the kids would just run around the restaurant and throw like go up to empty tables and throw the little rocks that hold the chopsticks. And so they would just run around and I'd be like, oh my God, get your kids together. Or they would sit at the table with their iPad and just stare. And I'm like, this is not for me. So I think all of those things started to hit me. And then I broke up with my more recent ex when we were traveling, after we were traveling together. And I met my current husband, and he was very staunchly, I don't want children. And I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, me neither. It was so relieving to have that in a partner. And granted, like I had that in my previous partner, but it was just like it became more and more solidified. And I think people in my life they questioned it because I'm a very nurturing person by nature. Because I'm a caretaker, I'm a people pleaser. I tend to help people fix their problems. I'm the first to volunteer. I'm the cheerleader. I'm like, make sure everyone has their lunch and everything's organized. But that's my nature. But it doesn't mean I have to be a mom, right? I think people mistake that a lot for women. We are maternal. We don't have to be mothers. And I have enough people to take care of in my life. I've been the caretaker for everyone. I just want to be my own.
No, that's why I asked the question. I think that having a different perspective, and I think that personally, I asked this question for somebody that I love very much that has told me that, and she knew that she had a conflicting relationship with the fact. And I think that I've always had this question. It's like, so when are you going to have kids? So when are you going to be a mother? When are you giving me grandchildren? And having a perspective that you don't have to, or you don't have to answer the question at all. But I appreciate you answering the question because I imagine that there is a lot of women out there that are still asking themselves, how do I know? How should I? Do I need to? And
Yeah.
and it in our society, it's so questioned. Like it's a tag, mother. Like you can be a mother. Doesn't have to mean that you have children.
Yes. And you know what? If you think back on your favorite adult relationships as a kid, they're your fun aunt and uncles. And a lot of them probably didn't have kids. And they become this important pillar in your life. And I will always use my maternal instincts with my friend's children, with my sister's son, right? Like with my nephew, who I'm lucky enough to have a nephew who's 3.5. Um, and I get to be the fun one that comes in and like spoils him and then leaves him when he's done. And I get to be the one that, when their parents are telling them they have to like stay in line and you're grounded and you're this and they run away, they're going to run away to my house, right? My husband will probably roll them their first joint and we will take them to get their first tattoos and we'll keep the secret, right? Like we're so happy to be those people and also have our freedom. And for anyone who's thinking about this, it's so important, first of all, that you have the conversation with yourself before you ever have a conversation with your partner. Um, and if your partner is someone who is a diehard and they'll be like, especially for a woman with a man who's like, no, no, we need to have children and you're not sure, I would speak to other women who've not had kids, and speak to people who have, because a lot of the women that I meet who are mothers, they go, oh my God, that's so smart. You're so like, I can't like, they didn't realize that was an option. Or they go, you know what? If you don't really want it, don't have them, because you will see the struggle in your friend's eyes to stay awake, to go to dinner and to figure out their schedule, to even make a plan with you. They're like, well, if you're willing to come over while my kid's taking a nap for this hour and a half, then I can spend time with you, right? That was not a life I wanted to have. But a lot of women feel complete. They feel fulfilled. They feel like that is their purpose. And I am super grateful that they do, because they keep the race producing. Fantastic.
I love that input. I wanted to ask if there is a quote that you have in your life that has just helped you at one point or another, and you've just kept that quote close.
You know what? I don't know that I have, and that's probably the horrible answer. I can't think of something right now. Um, Gosh, I think so. Though something that is palpable for me right now is at least like a lesson. Um, is having a BANSS list. Oh, you love words, and this was something that was given to me at a workshop with a now friend whose name is Lisa Kefauver, and she has a banned word list, and it spells out BANSS, but always, never, should and shouldn't. And it's such an easy thing to remember for yourself, and I love to use that as a framework for how I enter in thoughts and conversations. So I offer it if anyone is looking at it. Instead of a but, use an and, because two things can exist and it's totally valid that they do. You don't always need to negate a thought with an excuse, right? So recognize when you use the word but, and if you can replace it with and, to allow for abundance, allow for two things to
Mm.
exist. Always and never, we talked a little bit about that earlier, is using this very stringent hyperbolic verbiage that puts you into usually non-truths, right? It puts you in the territory of really the outskirts, the bell curve, right? You're in the either or stage. Really, most things happen towards the middle. So if you can get yourself to use words intentionally, it's usually not always a never. And a lot of the time we're telling that to someone, you always do this, you never do that, right? In partner conversations and relationships, that's a big one. So really be honest in those moments and be intentional with how you use that. And then should and shouldn't is just, you don't should all over yourself or others. It's very rude. It's that it's loaded with expectation, especially with yourself. I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done this. Why? Who says? What could you have
Mm.
done differently? What can you do better next time, or differently, not even better? So I implore everyone to use that as a little way to move about their day.
I love that. I love that introspective. I think like as you said, it has a lot of expectations and like the English language is like the French. It's so many ways to say something, but so many other ways to reframe it or rephrase it that can land so differently.
Yes.
Liz, this has been invigorating,
Great. Me too.
and I love to heard your perspective and learn from you.
Mhm.
Um, where can our listeners find you?
Yes, please come find me on Instagram. It's House of Worthship. Now it's a mouthful. I apologize. And it's spelling. You can go, I'm sure you'll find it in the show notes, but it's HAUSOF Worthship, WORTHSHIP. Also at houseofworthship.com. If you guys are interested in learning more about the community that we're building, I do 2 live sessions a month. One is light group coaching around a topic, and everyone comes together for a little membership connection. And the other, I bring in an expert in a different self help modality because we can't truly create a toolkit of our own if we're not exposed to different ways for us to learn. And then the whole through line, of course, is our Notice, Ask, Act. It's how we become self aware, ask deep questions, and then find intentional actions together. So it's all held in a container in circle for that group accountability and witnessing of each other as we go through all of our stages of life.
Oh, I love that. This has been amazing. I appreciate you sharing your story and sharing your teachings with us. And for everybody else, I will see you next Monday for another episode. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Bold Blueprint. If you enjoy or connected with this episode, I would love for you to like, comment, and rate the show. If you thought of someone during this episode, follow your gut and share it with them. That's how we can reach the person that needs this conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the episode, and I will see you here next Monday.